So good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Crable here with Rethink Ed. I'm the marketing manager and I coordinate our webinars, which we are absolutely thrilled to provide to the community on a semi-monthly basis. On October 7th, tomorrow, we are super excited to have a panelist of five experts, a panel of five experts. And with me here today, I have Dr. Kurt Hulett, who is a leading special education advocate and educational consultant based in Central Texas. He works extensively on behalf of children and families engaged in the IEP and Section 504 process, and he is here to answer a couple questions that we received when we opened up questions to people who are registering for the webinar. We got so many questions that there was absolutely no way we were going to be able to go through them all on tomorrow's webinar. So we were going to have a little bit of a primer session today where Kurt answers some of the questions, and if you need a little bit more in-depth information, please register for tomorrow's webinar. It's going to be phenomenal. Kurt is moderating it. Let me pull Kurt back up on my screen. So Kurt, your first question is, how do we continue to provide teachers with effective reinforcements for virtual learners?
Great question, Hannah. I think the biggest element, or there are two big elements, it's time and tools. So one of the big issues that we haven't quite figured out, or that I think sprung up on school districts, is that teachers who are teaching virtual and or live really have two jobs. And what we're finding is that even if you're just transitioning everything to online teaching, the number of hours it takes to figure this out, to work with new technologies, and then to apply it into a special ed process is a tremendous challenge. So one of the things we need to do is provide additional time to these teachers. And, we often get to work with our other peers and plan, and we need to be looking at 4, 5, 6 additional days that these teachers can get together to plan and work collaboratively. The other piece, teachers need tools. We're in a virtual environment, whether it's working on academic skills, whether it's working on social emotional skills. Teachers need the virtual tools to do their jobs. And this is something that districts can provide in a very easy way, but we have to think creatively and we have to do our research to ensure they have these tools.
Right. Wow. 5 days a week. It's all in. The next question is what is the role of a paraprofessional in behavior support for students who attend virtually?
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for really helping out and having the paraprofessionals really support the teachers. And one of the things I like to see is direct instruction from the actual paraprofessional. For virtual learners and setting up, whether it be Zoom meeting, whatever technology you want to use. But what we need to do is get these kids at home engaged. Being at home unengaged without direct instruction is a recipe for disaster. So one of the things we can do is really get these paraprofessionals to engage on a regular basis. We can also get them to go over the children's annual goals, short-term objectives, work with them on a regular basis. They can track their progress on those annual goals and short-term objectives. There's so much opportunity to maximize and utilize these aides and these paraprofessionals, but we've got to really be creative with them.
Gotcha. We're so thankful for all of the paraprofessionals that we get to work with on the implementation side. Those people are miracle workers. Online training recommendations in behavior, ABA, and mental health. What would your recommendations be?
Yeah, well, simply put, rethink education.
What a plug.
Yeah, right. Well, with special education training, behavior tracking, Rethink really does a tremendous job. And both professionally and personally, I've been extremely impressed with Rethink. And there are very few companies that focus in on these areas. So if you're looking for tools to really address the needs of your special ed population, and in particular, your children with behavioral needs, really take a look at Rethink, go to their website, and check out their tools.
We really appreciate that authentic endorsement. We're super proud of all of the data and tracking that we're able to provide to our district partners, and we're appreciative that it gets used to make so many important decisions. Does a district have any obligation to send support staff into the home if a district is providing 100% virtual learning? This is a tough one.
You know, it's an interesting question. From a technical standpoint, the answer would generally be no. There's no federal obligation. There's no legal IEP provide in-home supports to certain children. That said, make sure you check the IEP. If the IEP mandates that, then of course you would have to provide that. But you know, during this time, of course, safety is foremost of importance, and we have to be super careful and ensure everybody's health from the kiddos as well as the adults. But we do need to keep that option available. You have to remember, it's a really small percentage of children that have serious emotional or behavioral challenges. And if their needs are such that some type of a weekly check-in is necessary and it can be done safely, then that's something we do need to consider. And we don't want to not consider options because we're 100% virtual. Remember, we have to consider the unique needs of every single child.
Right, and it really comes down to checking that IEP and making sure you know what's in it, what the requirements are. Gotcha.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's a question a lot of schools are grappling with right now. So, number 5, how to implement goals that are focused on pro-social interaction with peers virtually when the child frequently engages in conflict with peers, but at home does not have as much difficulty.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think what it really comes down to, and let me take one step backwards. We're often reactive in education where we see certain behaviors and then we want to provide consequences to stop that behavior. Well, we know what we have to do is replace those behaviors with pro-social behaviors. And we're not always the best at proactively teaching pro-social skills to our kiddos. We talk about it a lot, but we don't always do the greatest job. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity to actually do direct teach via Zoom or whatever technology you're using to teach the pro-social skills and have fun with it, role play with it, get mom and dad involved if they're available, get the siblings involved if they're available. But you don't have to have negative pro-social skills. So take advantage of this time. The other piece is this. If the IEP goal or service is written in such a way that it requires some form of interaction with their peers, or is written in a way that it makes it clear it would have to be done in school, you're going to need to amend that goal if they're 100% virtual. Mm-hmm. So remember, if you have goals that are impossible to implement, you need to go back and amend those.
Gotcha. Love the idea of getting the whole family involved. It's definitely a whole family kind of time right now.
Yeah, have a good time.
Have a good time with it. How can we support parents of children with behavioral challenges virtually? This is obviously a huge issue as the school-to-home bridge has somehow become longer and shorter all at once. Is how do we really support those parents in that 100% virtual environment?
And this is a really serious issue that I'm hearing more and more about. You know, one child behavioral can be stressful for a school, and it's just that the needs can really be quite extensive and take quite a bit. So if we take all of these supports essentially away that these parents were getting 5 days a week in school for 8 hours a day, and now all of a sudden this kiddo's in a home environment with none of those supports, the stress that's placed on that parent is really extraordinary. So one of the things we have to look at is, do we have support groups? Are there virtual support groups we can provide to these parents to work together to talk through their issues? There are some really innovative districts that are actually engaging in these support groups, and I absolutely love it. Training, working with parents on, you know, what are the antecedents to these kiddos' behaviors? What are appropriate consequences for behaviors? How can we reestablish some good norms in the household and get the structure in such a way that it supports these kiddos and supports positive behavioral interactions? So a lot of it's supporting, it's training, it's also making sure they understand, because the schools are sending home all this work but yet the parents don't know how to navigate the online platforms. So another piece is take time with the parents, get online, get on a Zoom call, walk them through the process. And again, plug them into support groups, call regularly, use your paraprofessionals to reach out to these parents along with the teachers. So there's a lot we can do, and we have to remember the kind of stress they're under right now.
I would be interested when we speak with Nora tomorrow, one of our panelists, to see where she feels that the leadership, the most effective leadership, as far as organizing support groups for parents and trainings for parents, is going to come from within a district partner organization. Is that at the classroom level or higher?
And I will tell you, tomorrow on our panel, we have two of the more innovative SPED directors, special education directors in the country, with Nora Botcher and Aaron McGuire. So I couldn't be more excited to hear what they're doing. And I know what they're doing is quite innovative and really exceptional.
Definitely a case study for success, for sure. And then our last question is, how can we measure IEP behavior goals when the student is not around other children? I'm guessing this is going to come back around to amending.
Yeah, and again, if it's an impossible IEP goal, rewrite it. Do not ignore it. If there's one thing that Julie Weatherly has taught me, you know, one of the leading legal experts in the country, is make sure you're doing something. Make sure whatever that IEP says, you're making efforts to implement that IEP appropriately. Do not ignore it because it seems impossible during this time to implement it. Again, amend that IEP and adjust it in a way that's appropriate. And here's the deal. Again, we're talking about a very small percentage of children in a school that have significant behavioral challenges. So it should be a pretty small number of kiddos that would actually need to have their IEPs amended. So it should be a small group. Yeah.
So in that same vein, when it comes to behavior goals that would be involved with interaction with other children, you probably circle back to that whole family interaction as far as suggestions for amending.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, the behaviors that a kiddo struggles with in the school environment, it may vary a little bit, but it's not going to be a whole lot different in the home environment. If a kiddo struggles with basic social interaction in a school environment, they're going to likely have social interaction challenges at home with mom and dad. If they have a hard time taking the word no, and they throw a tantrum when told no in the school environment, likely that's going to happen at home as well. So there's going to be a lot of parallel behavior that we can really plug into.
And it will be that close connection with parents that really allows for an accurate amendment there to that IEP, most likely, right? It's that close communication between an educator and a parent.
That's exactly right. And the other thing to remember, you know, in special education, to some degree, we live in fear of due process. We live in fear of parents being unhappy.
IEPs.
Yeah, and stay coordinated, usually work through more informal processes if they're not getting what they need. So it's a smart strategy to be supportive and to help these parents as much as humanly possible and to really build quality relationships, because the last thing we want are things like state complaints and formal due process. In my opinion, it's a necessary component of IDEA, but it is not how we want to resolve conflicts. We want to do it at the lowest level, informally, and working side by side with parents.
Makes sense. Well, Kurt, that is all the questions that we have collected. We will absolutely continue to run questions when we have webinar registrations open, because this has been such an invaluable opportunity for us to really know what y'all want to know. And we want to get those questions to the people that we feel can answer them and support both parties in getting to the conclusion that is best for everyone. So if you want to hear more questions like this answered by people who are even smarter than Kurt and I, tomorrow at 1 p.m., Meeting the Needs of Children with Behavioral Challenges Virtually is a webinar with 5 really stunning panelists. Kurt is moderating it. You can find the registration link on our page. Just scroll down and look for it. We would really love to see you there. It's going to be an invaluable experience. If you can't make it, the recording will be available on YouTube. Thank you again so much for your time today, Kurt.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Take care.
See you tomorrow.